Bojack Horseman is one of my favorite shows ever, and The View from Halfway Down is one of my favorite episodes ever. So I think it makes a lot of sense that I am making a video on this episode. This episode features a cast of characters who are dead now, but for some reason they're all in Bojack's mother's house. Bojack goes in with a young Sarah Lynn, and he sees his mother as well as a variety of other characters, and it confuses him. At the same time, he knows that this cannot be real because it is most likely a dream. We see Bojack and his mother's dynamic, and it's pretty toxic, with her berating him to be useful, and when he finally is, she says, oh, he's still not useful, he's just a bully. I think this dynamic kind of hones into a lot of Bojack's trauma and why he acts the way he does, because even when he believes that he is doing something good and he feels good from doing something good, his mother tells him that what he is doing is actually not good because he is actually doing something wrong in order to do something good. Anyways, they all head to the dinner table and they start talking about death and sacrifice. There is a hole in the ceiling that is leaking out, and Bojack notices this. He is confused as to why no one else seems to have a problem with the hole in the wall and it leaking. Bojack's mother comments that if he's the only one who has a problem with it, then maybe he should have a bucket, because he's the one who has a problem and no one else seems to have a problem, so take a bucket and let it leak into the bucket. The cast or the gang of characters start talking about sacrifice. Sarah Lynn talks about how she sacrificed her whole entire life. She talks about the toxicity of the film industry and how her childhood was basically taken away from her. But she kind of sees a good in it, in a sense. She talks about how when she was younger, she had her private photos leak and how her mother would berate her for not being skinny enough or eating a lot of carbs. But she saw this as all good because it later led to her fans enjoying her tour or her persona and stuff like that. She ends up saying that everything that she's done or all the sacrifices that she's been through and all the toxicity that she's been conditioned into accepting is worth it. Corduroy, another character in this episode, dismisses that, and he says that her sacrifice was not worth it because it's not the same as Crackerjack, one of the other characters in this episode's military sacrifices. The ceiling continues to leak, and again, only Bojack seems to recognize or care. We then meet Herb, who is Bojack's friend, of course. Herb talks about his philanthropic activities and how after he came out and basically the whole world, including his best friend Bojack, rejected him, he found solace in helping others. Corduroy again contests that this sacrifice or this philanthropy was not good. It does not make him good because it is not selfless, because Herb feels good or feels happiness from helping others, and he gets something from that, in turn making what he is doing unselfless. In turn, it is selfish and inherently not good. They continue to have this conversation back and forth, and eventually the final person in this episode comes. It is Bojack Horseman's dad, Butterscotch / the secretary. Everyone then sits down. Beatrice, Bojack's mother, and Butterscotch start getting into it, arguing. And I think this really shows a lot of what Bojack's childhood was like, constantly watching his parents argue and just being left to sit and just deal with it. I think it shows especially how Bojack has always wanted to have a normal family, but because of his parents' inherent dislike for one another, there was never a chance of Bojack having a normal family because that simply was just impossible with the parents that he had. Although there are more characters in this episode, I will only be focusing on a select few or the main few that I found interesting. And we'll start with Sarah Lynn, who I'm going to coin the child that Bojack failed. Herb, the friend that Bojack betrayed. Corduroy, Bojack's first witness of KOS, possibly. And Bojack found him. Crackerjack, the ghost of expectations. Beatrice, his mother's idealized brother, the hero that Bojack and his father could never live up to. And then Beatrice and Butterscotch slash the Secretariat, the toxic parents who sadly burdened Bojack with a whole lot of his trauma. Other than the focus on morality and what constitutes being selfless or selfish or good or sacrificing, there is a deep focus on death and what happens or what is essing oneself. Herb talks about his almost S attempt and how when he was fired from horsing around and how Bojack didn't support him, he felt like S'ing himself. But because he saw that the Knicks had a good season, he decided not to do it. This conversation then leads to whether or not someone has a valid reason for S'ing themselves or whether someone doesn't have a valid reason and whether someone never even wanted to S themselves in the first place, so they can't even say that they had a reason because they never wanted to in the first place. Bojack's father and Herb just continuously have this conversation with others chiming in over and over. Again, the pus from the ceiling continues to drip profusely and no one seems to care. Bojack eventually coughs out the black pus and everyone just laughs. Because to them, this is just whatever it is and it's normal. Bojack then talks about how helping one of his students was the best part of his life. This is following the conversation of Herb's philanthropy and how finding philanthropy made him feel good, and that is how he ended up finding purpose in this life. Bojack talks about how helping one of his students was one of the best moments of his life. The reason for that is partly because he misses Herb and enjoys like the comeuppance of his fame, but the others laugh at him and saying, "Is this like the best part of your life? Like, how can this be the best part of your life? That's actually kind of sad." But Herb talks about how important it is to feel good when you help others. Anyways, there's just a lot of back and forth. Then there is the main point of this episode, which is the show. The show is not really a show, more so the end. It's very existential, it's very sad, and it's a moment for the characters at the dinner table to perform and then hit the door. Like, literally hit the door. Bojack usually leaves before the show starts, but this time he doesn't leave. Usually the actions of this episode are in a dream, and he usually wakes up right before he can see the show. But this time, he doesn't leave. And this is when we are led to know that Bojack is drowning. He is in a pool and he is lifeless, or he is about to become lifeless. Sarah Lynn asks him if he's coming. He said he's not, but he eventually comes. And the first person to perform, of course, is Sarah Lynn. She performs a very pop, very beautiful performance. Sarah Lynn's song. I'm going to read some of the lyrics to you guys so we can get a better image of what Sarah Lynn is saying in this performance. Although it's up-tempo, it starts off slow on the piano and gets really poppy, it's sad. So, it goes, "Life is a never-ending show, Oatsport, except the minor detail that it ends. The overture's a lifetime, but the show is short. Here with all your friends and family. You run the race, you blurt your lines, they put your face on shirts and shrines and giant signs 1,000 feet tall, and don't stop dancing till the curtain call." I'm going to skip over some things and I'm going to end with the "don't stop dancing." I wonder if this song is directly related to Bojack and the fact that he also, like Sarah Lynn's mother and Sarah Lynn's agent, taught Sarah Lynn that she should sacrifice everything just so the audience can enjoy themselves. Sarah Lynn says something, "A song you taught me when I was small." I saw this genius thing that I'm going to tag in the bottom, and it basically talks about how Bojack lectured Sarah Lynn that she should give everything, no matter what, to the audience. This song really shows how Bojack failed Sarah Lynn and how the world fails Sarah Lynn and how the world continues to fail the world, I guess. Life is in fact short, and even when someone dies, their story still goes on. I mean, some of the most iconic celebrities ever, like Marilyn Monroe, she's been dead for a long time, yet we still have shirts of her. We still use her likeness and all these other things, so she never quite dies. He never gets to lay her head down. And I guess that's the title, Don't Stop Dancing. As a performer, as an artist, as a celebrity, even when you are gone, you literally never get to rest. So figuratively, you don't stop dancing, but your life is still so short. And everything is for the audience. You barely matter. And I think that's how Sarah Lynn deals. She's accepted her faith even from a young age. And she's been taught that no one cares about her, and the only way that she can get care is by showing out and putting out and dancing and not stopping and never stopping dancing, never missing a tune for the audience. Again, I'm going to link a more detailed explanation of these lyrics in the description, so please check it out if you're interested. I'm going to read this quote from Dante's Inferno, translated by Palma. It goes, "Midway through the journey of our life, I found myself in a dark wood, for I had strayed from the straight pathway to this tangled ground." And this, I think, is very existentialist, and it really signifies what is going on in this show slash episode. After singing and performing, Sarah Lynn jumps into the door. Bojack wonders what's down in that door, what's going on, like why is she not coming back, where is Sarah Lynn? And the rest of them tell him to just sit down and watch the rest of the show. The show is supposedly dedicated to Bojack because, of course, this is Bojack's mind. This is Bojack dealing with things. So, of course, Bojack is the central point of the episode. Bojack apologizes to Sarah Lynn, saying that he wishes that he could have protected her. But it's too late now. Bojack knows that Sarah Lynn is dead, but Sarah Lynn's performance is still about death and is extremely creepy. Sarah Lynn's jump into the other side of the door is just rationale for Bojack. After Sarah Lynn, then there's Corroy Jackson, who of course performs and also ends up going into the door. And once they of course go into the door, they don't come back because the door is the end. Bojack is worried. He's worried and he wants to know what's on the other side of the door, but it's not yet his turn. Eventually, the Secretariat slash Butterscotch and Bojack have a heart-to-heart. He pulls Bojack aside and he lets Bojack know that he did care about Bojack. This is a moment that Bojack never really got with his father. His father is dead. This thing that he is seeing is not his father. It's his mind trying to deal with everything. Butterscotch lets Bojack know that he cares about Bojack and that he's always loved Bojack. And everything that he did was to help Bojack and protect Bojack. And Bojack lets Butterscotch knows that he wishes that they had this heart-to-heart when he was still alive, when Butterscotch was still alive. Eventually, it is now Butterscotch's turn to perform. Butterscotch has a monologue, and this monologue is very heartbreaking. It is titled The View from Halfway Down. He is, of course, referring to death. Butterscotch's speech is one of the most famous portions of this episode, and it's honestly very sad. He talks about the view from halfway down. He talks about how he wished he knew about the view from halfway down before he jumped. It's very gripping, and constantly Butterscotch wishes that he could finish his speech. But the door of end continuously and progressively gets closer and closer and closer and closer to him. And he falls in, just like the others. So now I'm going to read a little bit of the poem. The View from Halfway Down. The weak breeze whispers nothing. The water screams sublime. His feet shift. Titter-totter. Deep breath. Stand back. It's time. Toes untouched the overpass. Soon he's waterbound. Eyes locked shut, but peek to see. The view from halfway down. There's more to this poem, but I feel like it's just such a deep and sad poem, clearly depicting what it feels like and what a person does when they are about to jump. And then it is Bojack's mother and Crackerjack's time to perform. They also have their performance and eventually go into the door. Bojack aggressively wants to wake up, but he hasn't quite come to the realization that we have. And it's the fact that Bojack's body is lying dead in the pool. And all he can do is watch and enjoy the show. If he's lucky, maybe someone will find him. And if he's not, he will also meet the door. Bojack again wants to wake up, but he cannot. He finally remembers that he jumped into the pool, possibly trying to S himself. He called Diane. So he's scared. He's frustrated. He believes he called Diane. So he's fine. There's no way. He shouldn't be going through that door. He's fine. After some time, it is Herb's turn. Herb is the last person to go into the door. And of course, there's a reason for this. Herb is Bojack's one true relationship. The person that Bojack should have stood beside. The person who really helped Bojack be where he is. But Herb tells Bojack to find his peace. Because if he does not find his peace, then he will never be at peace with his death. Or he will continue to run away and the goo will just chase him. Herb lets Bojack know that there is no other side. There is no other side behind this door because they just simply disintegrate. We just simply cease from being. And that again haunts Bojack. Bojack finally realizes that Diane did not pick up and that he went back and jumped into the pool after she did not pick up. It's finally Bojack's turn to go into the door. And he tries to run away from it. The goo then follows him. The house that once was just a simple house becomes almost a maze or a trap to keep Bojack ensnared. Bojack tries to find a phone. He wishes to call Diane. He wishes to call Diane to see if she found him, if she finally picked up, if she realized that he's in the pool. And he talks to someone, but it's not Diane. It's of course his mind trying to rationalize things. He realizes that Diane never picked up and that he again went back into the pool after Diane did not pick up. And he stays on the phone with Diane and she tells him what's done is done. We never get to see the goo absorb Bojack, and that's because Bojack doesn't in fact die. We know Bojack doesn't die because there's an episode after this. But this episode again is quite haunting. And it's so real. Bojack's journey, or this episode, reminds me of Dante's Inferno. Like Dante's Inferno, Bojack is descending into some metaphorical hell. Bojack and Dante are forced to confront sins. Bojack, his sins, Dante, sins of others, and maybe also his sins. But unlike Dante, there is no redemption for your sin. There is no redemption for the actions that you have done. Because once a person dies, they are dead. And then you come with this crushing realization that some mistakes just simply cannot be fixed. And the only thing that you can do to make yourself better or continue living is to do good by the people who are still living and still are alive. I think this episode is, of course, a message on essaying, but I think there's also just a very deep meaning behind the essaying, as well as decision making and how we deal and move on from things. Sometimes we're trapped in a bad decision or a regret that we just simply cannot do. And this episode just asks us, what if that is just it and there is no do-over? Most of the time there is no do-over, and that's the point of life. The last point of this episode that I would like to focus on is the Secretariat / Butterscotch's speech. I feel like this speech is just so famous and haunting for very good reason. I could do a thorough breakdown on just this speech or poem alone, but I'm just gonna highlight a couple points that I found really compelling and interesting. And how they relate to regret. I've seen some Reddit posts talking about how this poem made them feel, and I completely agree. I think that this poem talks about the regret, maybe possibly regret for doing S. Sometimes you wish that you could see the view from halfway down, like literally. Some people noted the fact that a lot of people who jump or commit, they regret after they jumped, but then by that time it's too late. Once you jumped, you've committed to it. But what if after you jump you don't want to commit, which a lot of people end up not wanting to commit after they've jumped, but by the time that you've jumped, you've already jumped, and that's just it. I feel like the S is a metaphor for, again, decisions, life, choices, dealing with grief, becoming a better person, just so many other things. I think sometimes we do miss the view from halfway down. The door is in fact inevitable. You know, everyone is gonna pass through that door, but it's like if you're passing through that door, you want to make sure that you're not regretting anything when you pass through the door. And I think that's what this episode is trying to shine a light on, where if you do have regret, is that you have dealt with that regret and you just realize that there is no going back. In fact, like you've committed, you've made that choice, you've made that choice. There are no do-overs, I guess, in life and death.